Welcome to the BitGeek podcast. I'm your host, Ron Avis, and sitting with me to my left is my co-host, the Prince of Pixels,
Nick Wright.
And today we're going to be doing the 1980s TV show draft. Okay, Nick, welcome to the 1980s TV show draft. This is a new format. Really, it's sort of like a take on our old familiar I pick five, you pick five format.
Yeah, you just gave it a new name.
Yeah, I just thought I would dress up a little bit, and
we kind of kept our list secret to each other, more or less.
Yeah, which I think it'll be interesting. We've always sort of shared, not because we wanted to be prepared for each other's answers, but just to make sure we were having unique answers. Yeah. So we would always kind of share our list with one another.
So we made sure to have extras just in case you steal mine or I steal yours.
Yeah, and I just thought it might be kind of fun, even though this is kind of like a sports thing, the draft. And I know you're a big sports fan, so you immediately latched onto the idea right away.
I was like, what?
What was it that I said something about a draft, and you were like, what?
I forget how it went, but I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it was like something about, like, when I think of draft, it's like, I think of beer.
Well, yeah, it was something about, like, how we were going to do the formatting, and I was like, I'm just thinking of beer when you say draft.
Yeah, I kind of had to explain the concept of a draft because, I'd kind of forgotten that, like drafts are exciting to sports fans. It's like they happen once a year, and it's like a chance for your team to get better overnight.
When you explained it, like when like on a kickball team, and like this person goes first and picks somebody, and then I was like, okay, I can do that.
Right. I was like, whether you know it or not, Nick, you participated in a draft, and so
I mean, I hear the term all the time, but I've never like watched one like a sports draft go down.
Yeah. Well, I watch them all, man, since I'm obviously a big sports nut. And I thought it would be the format could be advantageous for us even in the future, as if we, we're picking more or less just 10 shows. And these are any 80s show. Like at first it was like sitcom, but then, you're like, let's just do everything.
Well, but non-animation though.
Oh, right. That's
we've already kind of covered that. Yeah, and maybe there's even more to still do with animation, but
yeah, we don't want to. We might want to revisit animation again, and but where I was going kind of with the whole format thing was, there are multiple rounds in a draft, and maybe in the future, if this goes over well, we can have like round 2, round 3, whatever. But this can be a sitcom, a drama.
We kind of started out by saying the word sitcom.
Yeah.
But I was kind of realizing, there are 80 shows that I want to say that aren't sitcoms.
Yeah.
So.
Well, all of mine originally in my head were sitcoms, and then when you'd said that, it really kind of opened things up, and I think it's going to make the show more interesting because it forced me to look at other possibilities, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that show. That would be a great show to talk about. And you have your heavy hitters, your number, like the number one pick is like that ringer that's going to make your team really good right away, and so like we both have shows that we probably considering picking right away, but I'm also thinking that you're going to have some shows that I didn't think about, and vice versa, because I surprised myself even. There are shows on my list that I have here that I'm sure you're going to probably think about too, but that I think I have about 4 shows that I don't think you would ever think about.
Yeah, like I jotted down, the shows that like kind of first popped in my mind, and then I started kind of researching stuff to, because you forget things.
As you do, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to forget that I could have had that opportunity.
Oh man, that's a good one. I didn't even think of it. So yeah.
So usually how the draft works is, each team gets a pick and they go in order. There's only 2 of us, so we're just going to alternate. Again, it's kind of redressing of the old format. But
so you gonna flip a coin or?
Yeah, well, usually the team with the worst record gets to go first, And I thought this might be a good time to bring up the whole the PlayStation Classic. So, should we talk about this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this. Like Martin was part of that episode, but there's no need to wait for Martin just to rub my nose in the fact that I got 1 out of 15 right.
Yeah, so they announced the remaining 15 games for the PlayStation Classic.
Right.
And so
I didn't do so good.
Martin and I both tied with 5 correct answers, and some of them the same, some of them different. Mm-hmm. But you had 1. But to even like rub it in even more though, of that 1, well, we all 3 picked that 1.
Right. So, I didn't bring anything.
So you didn't bring anything to the table.
I didn't bring anything up. But yeah, so let's talk. Let's just quickly go over the list, I guess, real fast.
Okay.
So Battle Arena to Shinden.
I had that one.
You had that. Cool Borders 2. Nope, nobody had that. Destruction Derby. Martin had that. Final Fantasy 7. We already knew about that.
Yeah, that was.
Grand Theft Auto.
I don't think any of us had that.
No. Intelligent Cube. I know none of us had that. Jumping Flash. We already knew about. Metal Gear Solid was one we all got.
That was all 3. So that was the one that you.
That was the one I got.
We all 3 called.
Yeah.
Which while you're on that one, let me point out though, because Castlevania Symphony of the Night in my mind was just a given.
Yeah.
Just absolutely just.
I was right there with you, man.
Without a doubt, a given.
Martin was on the fence.
And it's a Konami game. So Metal Gear Solid, they've got Konami on board. So I just don't understand.
It doesn't make any sense. You can't even like come at it from a, because Kojima, there's all the hurt feelings with Konami and Kojima, and it's on there. Because Kojima's no longer with Konami.
It could have played so well too, because there's that Psycho Mantis battle in Metal Gear Solid that's like, oh, I see you play Castlevania games. They could have rigged it to where it sees a save file on the classic.
Yeah.
But since it doesn't even exist, then can you just not have that?
I guess. Or will they even? Will they go to? I kind of feel like they won't go to the trouble after looking at this list. Maybe they'll just take that out entirely.
I don't know.
But yeah, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, which I
don't think anybody said that, but
I feel like Martin passed it when he was cycling through games.
When I saw it on the list, I was like, that's I could see that one.
Oddworld Abe's Odyssey.
I said that one.
You had that. Yeah. Rayman, which
that was on like my list at one point, but I don't think I officially said it.
Right. It's one of those games where I looked at it and thought I wouldn't be surprised.
I chose others over it, but it was one I definitely thought about.
Resident Evil Director's Cut, which you and Martin both said Resident Evil 1.
We both did it, and you were like, well, if you want to be technical, nobody said Director's Cut.
You were busting my balls so hard, man. I was like, well, if you want to get technical, you only got 4. You're like, well, it's still 3 more than you got.
Martin and I are still tied regardless.
Yeah. Because you were like, I'm the winner,
Oh, yeah, because I made typos. Because I just, made a formula and then just checked them all like that. And I was like, I got 5 and Martin got 3. But it's because I had a typo on 2 of Martin's.
Right. So it was like, actually, you guys tied.
Yeah.
Resident Evil, you guys both got that.
I apologize to Martin for that.
Revelation Persona?
Persona, yeah.
Now, Persona, is that Revelations? Is that like a director's cut kind of thing? Like what's?
Well, I'm not real familiar with that, so I'm guessing is that maybe like the first of the Persona series. I don't know. There's going to be viewers that will know, but because there was another like Persona game that I had considered on my list but didn't officially put, but it wasn't that though.
Okay, but then so Ridge Racer 4 Type 4, we knew that. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo.
That surprises me.
Mm-hmm. A little bit me too.
Yeah.
I remember looking at it.
I love the game.
Oh, you loved that game. I remember you were pretty into that game at the time.
But it surprises me.
Siphon Filter, which Martin got. Yeah. Tekken 3 we knew.
That was announced.
Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six.
Yeah.
Way surprising. Twisted Metal, I think you and Martin both got.
Yeah, I think we both got that.
Yeah. And then Wild Arms we already knew about. So, you guys together, well, how many did you say? Unique, like we got 7 or 8 out of the 15?
Martin and I combined got 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's almost half. That's not too bad. And I just admit it, man. Like, you were giving me a hard time about the Crash games, and you were right.
Put all your stock in
I
Crash.
did. I had 4 Crash games, and I had reasons to back it up. I did. They were all big time sellers.
And I was like, I understand your reasons, but I disagree.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. Now, but I did think there will be a Crash game.
Yeah.
And there's not.
I'm just amazed because, like, during the episode when we were recording it, you or I or one of us were like, Martin's usually right about these things. And everything pretty much that he'd said was going to happen happened just about. Yeah. He called it. He's like, I think they're going to cheap out on licensing. I don't think they're going to want to bump heads with games that just came out, like, the Crash reboot, or not reboot, but remaster.
And
Spyro. And he's like, I think they'll fill it with stuff, just filler. And who knows, maybe a volume 2 will be an actual reality. Like, I'm not so quick to dismiss that theory anymore.
I'm still wondering if they would make it to where you can download content to it.
Well, there was an image that was...
maybe replace games or something, because, you're going to fill it up. I don't know how much room is going to be on the thing. It's going to fill up quick.
I don't think it's yet to be said exactly like what... I don't think they really share that with the NES or the SNES either. Hackers just figured it out.
But maybe you could say something like, I'll buy this game and drop this game, which you could, you can re-download at any time maybe if they set it up right. I don't know.
Yeah, but, in the way they worded their announcement, I think it was like in Europe, though. I don't think it was like the North American ad, but it was like 20 preloaded games. So like, does that language mean possibly that you could load other games
not
too?
Necessarily.
No, not necessarily.
It'd be nice to think that, but
yeah, we would be giving Sony way too much credit probably.
Right.
But anyway, so there's that. So like, I had the worst record. Maybe I should go first, but just to be fair, I thought we'd flip a coin.
Oh, well, you could go first.
You want to go ahead and go first? All right. In true spirit of a draft, I'll go ahead and go first.
You suck. You
I was terrible. I need good shows to like make up for how bad I was at predicting. You guys are probably much bigger PlayStation guys than me, and you had your finger on the pulse way more than I did. I admit it. I was looking at my list and I was like, oh, there's no all these games. Like I just thought I had it. I had so many.
Like, you cannot. There's not enough. There's 15 more games to choose from, and you wanted to put like 4 Crash games.
I know, right? And I had like Driver and like some other stuff on there, and Silent Hill. I was like, I know they're going to be on there. You guys are wrong. You'll see. I was way wrong. And you just like sent the like link in text. It was just the announcement. You didn't say. You just kind of like put it there. Like, there you go. I knew I was going to eat shit for that. I knew I was. Okay, so I'm going to pick first. So this is big. This is the first pick in the draft. So I got to pick something major. All right. I think I'm ready. I think I know who I'm going to choose as my first pick. So for the first selection of the 1980s TV show draft, Ron selects Alf. Alf, for Nick and I especially, and for many others, it was like such a seminal show in our childhood. Ran from 86 to 1990. And what's really interesting about Alf is it was insanely popular for like 3 seasons, and then, or maybe 4. And then, like, all of a sudden, people just didn't like Alf.
Spawned a cartoon.
Yeah, there were a couple of cartoon shows.
A couple?
Yeah, there were a couple. There was the one where it was just like straight up, they were on Melmac, and it was where he was from, and there was the Rhonda character, and they were major players. But then like there was another Alf show where it was just like Tales.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like Alf Tales or something,
yeah.
and they were I want to just say like
Robin Hood. And
yeah,
stuff.
like public domain type stuff. So
Yeah.
like and it would feature all the characters from the cartoon.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and so yeah, there was a lot of Alf.
Mm-hmm.
And when that show first came out, it just was amazing. I mean, it was everything you'd want as a kid. Like it was like the Muppet Show. Like you had the star character was this alien Alf, and he had this really funny sense of humor. And I had like the Lunchbox and the Burger King toys.
You still have it around here, don't you?
Yeah, I still have Alf. He's over here. He's up over on the shelf. And I remember, do you remember getting those toys from Burger King?
Oh, absolutely.
Burger King has been invaded by Alf puppets. Please help.
Hey, I'm hungry.
Yo, want a Whopper? No problem.
Just $2.99 and a plain broiled Whopper or large sandwich gets you your own Alf. 4 different furry aliens. Each comes with his own record.
'Cause we're doing the Melmac Drop.
These aliens are friendly, but they're getting out of hand. Hurry, just $2.99 gets another Alf out of here.
We do it like you do it at Burger King. Where'd you park?
Yeah, the one with the Hawaiian shirt.
Oh, that's the one I wanted. See, like I had the chef.
Yeah, that's the only one I had.
That you had the best one. That was probably like the first one they did too. Like I probably got it like week 2 or whatever.
Yeah, I love that little Alf puppet.
And do you remember that they came with records that you could play?
Yeah, I forgot until just now, but yeah.
But they were pretty much just on like really thin cardboard. So you could fit it on a record player and it would technically play the record, but it was awful sound quality. And I don't even remember what was. I guess they were songs.
Yeah, I don't know.
But or maybe they were storybooks or something. I remember storybooks were like a big deal back in the 80s.
Yeah.
But when you think of Alf, like what is like the main thing you think of? Like what are your top memories of that show?
He's always trying to eat the cat.
Yeah, that was a weird thing, wasn't it? Lucky, he was always trying to eat Lucky, their pet cat.
Yeah.
Apparently, they had cats on Melmac, and that was a delicacy there. And he was just always after that cat. And there would be scenes where he's like petting the cat. He'd have it like halfway in his mouth, and then Willie would come around the corner, and he'd be like, "Oh," and it was like petting, nice kitty.
Yeah.
But Alf didn't just stop there. Like, yeah, he did have his cartoon, but he would also pop up on Hollywood Squares.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've talked about that before.
I think so. Yeah, right. He would be like the center square.
Mm-hmm.
He would show up in these like I want to say he hosted the Tonight Show or something. I have this vague memory of Alf hosting the Tonight Show. Or maybe it was like an episode.
There was like some kind of a comeback like a few years ago that there was like some kind of talk show or something. I never saw it though. I just kind of remember.
Well, I didn't know about this. There was like a comeback show.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like a Space Ghost kind of thing, I think. And maybe it was only online. Like I say, I never saw it, so
okay.
I don't even know.
Jeez, yeah. Well, it must not have been publicized too heavily because I really don't remember. Kind of like when Spaceballs got a cartoon and it was terrible.
Yeah, I never knew about that.
Yeah, it was awful. And so, like, not too many people recall it. I just remember reading about it, months leading into when the show was supposed to debut, and I knew that none of the none of the original actors, obviously John Candy's dead, and Joan Rivers has passed, and can't really think of anybody else that passed. But none of even the actors that were still alive had nothing to do with it.
Right.
So, like, they had all these impersonators, like, making their voices. It was just awful. But one thing I wanted to talk about with Alf was how sad it ended.
Oh, yeah.
There was a cliffhanger. And so, like, all throughout the show, the thing is Alf's an alien, and they're just trying to keep him out of public. But he's this kind of, like, real fun-loving guy, and he's, like, sometimes the Offmonics, I think is what they were called, like, they would sometimes see him, but they weren't sure.
Nosy neighbors.
Those nosy neighbors, yeah. And so, like, the FBI, like, there was always this threat of being seen. And, of course, Alf doesn't want to be caught because then the government would want to capture him and dissect him and do the whole, like, E.T. thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, but he gets taken by the government in the very last episode. Very dramatically, and that's it. They didn't have a season.
Did it say like to be continued? And
I think so,
but then it was ended.
I'll be honest with you. This is all like like I've read about these things. Like I don't even think I think even I kind of grew out of Alf and was not watching it up to the end.
I've seen the clip like online since.
Yeah, there's like a helicopter and like it's at
but
night.
I never saw it at the time.
I think that's how I've seen it. Just clips. Like Alf ended like this. And, like I said, it was like in 1990, I was probably on to like The Simpsons or something else. Like Alf was kind of not cool anymore by the time it ended. Yeah. But for like 2 or 3 seasons, like you just couldn't get any hotter than Alf. Like it was just the coolest thing. Wasn't it weird when you'd see like they'd get like a little person or something, and put him in like an Alf costume?
Like the opening credits would have like where he'd like walk up and take a picture with the family.
That's right,
it was like real weird looking.
Yeah, it threw you off,
Yeah, it was not quite the same as the puppet.
No, I don't know why, but it just never was quite the same. But anyways, that was a cool show. I really enjoyed it. It's my number one pick. If we're talking 80s TV, I'm just going to get right out there and I'm taking it. It's my number one pick.
Okay.
Nick, who's going to be your number one pick? Or the second pick in the 1980 TV show draft?
My absolute number one, I really don't think I can say. I think it needs to be saved for like a 70s show, because I'll just leave it at this.
Yeah,
it aired from 72 to 83. So it was like the beginning of the 80s when it ended. So.
If I guess it, will you confirm?
No, we need to save it.
Okay. I just want to guess.
So,
okay, but yeah, there
I
are shows that cross decades, and I think we, like you said, if it spent more time in the 70s than the 80s, then maybe you shouldn't include it.
Yeah, so I think maybe I better save it. But
all right.
I think it'd be pretty ezy to figure out.
I know what it's gonna be.
72 to 83.
Yeah. What could that be, folks? 11 years.
So okay, I'm gonna say for my number one. Well, you led with Alf, so I'm gonna lead with sort of a similar Fraggle Rock.
Fraggle Rock. Okay.
So that was 83 to 87.
So more puppetry.
Yeah. So more puppetry. Right?
Not the cartoon, but the
not the
HBO
cartoon. Yeah.
series.
So yeah, it had a cartoon just like Alf did.
Yeah.
But yeah. HBO. Yeah, I remember we'd always turn on HBO at whatever time it came on. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
this is a time before HBO was like so critically acclaimed with shows every night. They didn't really have a lot of shows back in the
they
80s.
always had that like little thing like start up for like the rating of like whatever the show is that, and I don't remember like what description. I mean, I'm sure it was like G or whatever, but what it said about Fraggle Rock. But I remember like something would always like come up first, and you're like, oh yeah,
here comes Fraggle Rock. That's a great theme song too.
Yeah,
like how's it go?
Fraggle Rock.
So so that show ran from when to when?
83 to 87.
Okay, and now I watched Fraggle Rock. I know I did, and I have fond memories of watching it. But I don't think I had HBO at that time.
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, because when I was talking with Mark, and he said that it did air.
Your brother Mark, he's been on the show a few times.
I forget what channel he said it was, like USA or something like that.
Yeah. Which would have absolutely been when I'd seen it, probably.
But it was after it ended, though. It was like, 88 or something, because it was like right after it had ended.
Right.
And
it immediately went into like
would
syndication.
You have waited that long, though? I don't know.
Well, okay. So you know how like HBO will occasionally do like a free preview weekend?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'd seen a few episodes here and there. Like I know I haven't. To this day, I haven't seen the entire run.
Yeah.
I just have memories of watching it from time to time.
Oh, man. It was like, I guess it was once a week. I don't know when it aired.
Yeah, it was probably once a week.
But
don't know how many episodes were total, but I mean, it was like a once a week.
That was
show.
A family thing, and we just.
Is that right?
Yeah, we just sat down and watched Fraggle Rock.
Who was your favorite character?
I think Boober or Wembley. I don't know. I like them all.
I liked Goober.
Red.
Now, was Goober the one that had like the hat?
Monkey. Boober had the hat.
Yeah, I loved him.
He was always like washing his socks.
I liked him. Red was cool. I liked Red.
Red was like really outgoing.
Very outgoing. She had the little like kind of like did they all have like ears? Like I'm trying to remember now how the Fraggles were, because like she had
No,
ponytails.
She had like these like pom
Yeah.
ponytails, but no, they didn't really have ears.
So was it Gobu?
Gobo.
He was kind of like the main guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
A little bit like the main character. I think I like the Mobley. No, I'm getting the names wrong. See, I must not have watched it all that
The two
much.
girls, there was Red and Moki.
Moki, yeah, I remember Moki.
And Wembley was like the yellow, like crazy one. Goober was the one that washed the socks.
Yeah.
Gobo, the ringleader.
Yeah, I liked him because didn't he have like kind of a Hawaiian-ish kind of shirt too, like or a collared shirt?
Wembley did.
Was that Wembley?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's him as I was thinking of that.
Gobo had like a striped shirt.
Okay.
And
okay.
He would always kind of play his little guitar, sing songs. He had the Uncle Traveling Matt.
That was a really big part of the
went to,
show.
like outer space.
Yeah, that was kind of like the Fraggles. Yeah, because traveling Matt would go out into the world.
Yeah.
And
send
so,
postcards.
I don't know if we necessarily have to talk about Fraggles as a show, but we might as well a little bit. So the Fraggles live in this man's base, floor, walls
It's
or
like
something?
a hole in the wall that kind of just leads to it's
like a cave system.
It's like another dimension. Like you pass through like this portal.
That's
really.
probably a better way to describe it. Yeah.
But that hole in his wall is like how you get there.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a mouse hole kind of thing, right?
Because all of a sudden it's like just this massive cave as soon as you go through
Yes. And the dog. Now, the dog was like a puppet too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the dog was like the only one that was hip to the Fraggles. I don't think the man really ever knew about him, did he?
No. Not. I think he finally maybe saw him at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know I watched that very last episode and knowing full well, like, this is the last episode, but I don't really remember details about it so much. I think he finally, like, saw him at that last episode.
Really?
I think.
And what was his reaction?
I don't remember.
Okay. Now, it's interesting you talked about it because that show had an end. Like, not all shows get that an end.
Yeah,
where,
it was like a definitive end.
A wrap it up kind of like, we know this is the final show, and you knew that it was the final show. Like, you knew it going in. You were sad about that.
I know, like, the old man was, like, moving, and for whatever reason, I mean, I guess the Fraggles were sad because there would be, like, no way to get the postcards from Uncle Matt. I don't know. I don't really remember, but whatever, like, the new house he was moving at, like, they had like all these moving boxes around, full of stuff, and they lifted up like a box, and there was a hole, like another hole, like exactly like the one hole, like on the wall, like they revealed after they moved this box, and Fraggles came through, and they're like, oh look, here's a cave we didn't know about, and they go and explore, and it leads to there.
So it kind of ends like that. They're exploring a new a new home.
And I think that's where they kind of all met, and they're all happy and whatever. Yeah. I don't really remember though.
Was it kind of a sappy sort of ending?
I kind of remember it was kind of like all this sadness that they're moving away and whatever. I do that all the time.
Which was the red one? Is he
Blinky?
Blinky, yeah, okay, Blinky.
I was like, Red. Oh, you're not talking about Fraggles.
Yeah. Red's very popular. Like, nostalgia-wise, I think Red's sort of the one that gets carried over the most. A lot of girls, like, I'll see them wearing, like, the Fraggle Rock shirt, obviously, with red.
Yeah.
Like, I don't ever see the other ones on T-shirts and stuff. It's always red.
Yeah.
But,
I don't know. I don't really see Fraggle Rock shirts.
I don't see them a lot, but when I do, it's usually red.
And there was the, I forget what they were called. The big giants.
I was gonna mention them. Now I can't remember.
Gorgs or
they kind of frightened me a little bit as a kid.
They were cool.
They were really cool, and they had like big bellies.
I remember seeing like some special that was showing like how it all worked and everything.
Oh,
it
cool!
Would show like the people like
inside
in the outfit, and like the little remotes that would like work the eyes and the mouth.
You could tell they had like the animatronic features on the head, but they were clearly somebody inside.
Yeah, so there's like somebody else like controlling like a RC thing that would, like do the mouth and everything. And
like Jabba the Hutt, kind of like a couple people takes a couple people to bring them to life.
And there's another guy just kind of tromping around inside the suit.
I remember there was like a younger one. And was he usually the one that kind
Junior,
of and he was kind of immature and like would get tricked by the Fraggles.
Yeah. I'm gonna get you, Fraggles.
Yeah, and he had that great voice, that dopey voice. And so there was a mom, I guess, that you maybe didn't hear or see. Like you heard her, but didn't.
No, yeah, you see her.
Okay.
And the dad too. He was like the king.
Did they live in like a trash, like a junkyard kind of?
Well, they had like this small like castle,
Yeah.
and there was like a trash heap that was like kind of next to their castle. That the all-knowing and all-wise trash heap.
And it talked and stuff. Okay, that's what I was going to mention. Was there like something that had like a facial feature?
Yeah, and it had like the two little whatever they were that would hang out with the trash heap, and they were like the all-knowing.
Yes,
Trash heap. Yeah.
I gotta find this show like on DVD or something and rewatch this. I didn't. I must not have watched it that much because like I have vague memories of this.
And
stuff.
the doozers.
The doozers are great.
The little guys. They would like build all these structures, and the Fraggles would just eat it.
They're constantly building their infrastructure of like roads and bridges, and they would just.
They made like these crystal things like out of radishes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like everybody always felt so bad for the doozers because they were just sweet little like like ants.
And they didn't even care. That's
not
just like,
really. They just were like to build stuff.
They're
really.
like, woohoo, time to build.
Yeah.
On top of what they just destroyed.
And they just did it all the time.
Yeah.
Did really they ever talk about the doozers? Like what exactly was their like motivation or or that's all they were there for, just to be kind of the foil or the
just to build
the
stuff.
Fraggles make trouble for them.
We had like a little wind up doozer.
Did you really?
Yeah, it's like a little plastic guy. You wind him up and he just kind of walk along.
Oh, that's awesome. Now the doozers kind of like remind me of Bunsen from the Muppet Show. Like they kind of had that like smooth kind of like
I mean, I guess I can see the similarities.
A little bit similar. But he always reminded me of the doozers when I would see him.
Yeah,
because like I don't know, they were just cute.
They're
little
kind of
guys.
close to the same color.
Yeah. Well, that's a cool show, man. Were you a fan of the cartoon? Did you watch it all?
We watched the cartoon a little, but the show was better.
I wonder if it had the same voices, same actors.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. I don't know. Not something like as a kid that I really paid attention to.
I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but that was a Jim Henson Creature Shop.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
For my pick, the number 3 pick in the 1980 TV show draft, I am going to take Night Court.
Oh, yeah. I got to scratch that one off.
Yeah. Bum, bum, ba-da-da-da, that saxophone intro.
Yeah.
So that ran from 84 to 92. There were some really good ensemble cast shows in the 80s, and we'll probably get to another handful of them too before the end of this episode. But Night Court was it always felt like a Looney Tunes like kind of cast or something. There were very specific characters on the show.
Yeah.
It wasn't realistic at all. You had Judge Harry, played by the late great Harry Anderson, who was like this magician who had I guess got his start from another show. And then that character kind of like got his own show. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I know he was on Cheers.
Yeah. He was on Cheers first.
What was he the same character though?
No, I don't mean to say that. I just mean like he was such a popular character. They decided to give like when they were
because he was very similar, but he was
very
like a
similar,
con artist on Cheers.
Yes, and apparently that's more like true to like how he was when he was discovered.
And I know he was named Harry.
Yeah, and the reason that I read always the reason that they named his character Harry was because he wasn't really an actor by trade. So
just always name him his real name.
They would name him his real name, so he would like know to like look it up, I guess, on his cues or whatever. That's just what I like read, and I've read that or heard that from other places too. Yeah. So I just think that's interesting. But yeah, he's the judge. Then you had Mac, who is kind of like his. What do you call the guy who would like hand him the cases?
Oh,
that's not the
bailiff.
Is it the bailiff, or is that what Roz was?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm
sassy Roz.
I don't know. Yeah, I know.
But he was kind of like the guy that would come up with the folder and hand over the case, and do
I
that
guess
thing.
Roz was the bailiff. I don't know.
Yeah, and then you had Bull.
He was just the guy that in the sweater vest.
He always had that sweater vest. That's right. So you had him. There was Mac, and then Roz and Bull, who was a straight up character.
Richard
Mole, very silly, big, tall guy, just interesting to look at just to start with. But then you got the fact that he was very silly also. My favorite character though was Dan Fielding.
Yeah.
He was always the best to me. He was like he would have been, I guess, like the district attorney, like the prosecuting attorney. Kind of had that like killer instinct more to him.
I've been trying to think of the girl's name. I can't think of her name.
Marky Post was her name, but what was her character? Hang on, I'll pull it up. Because he was always trying to get with her.
Yeah.
Always
hitting on her. But
and she was never having it.
Harry Stone, that was like his judge name, wasn't it?
Judge Harry Stone, yeah. So Harry T. Stone, Dan Fielding, Christine Sullivan.
Yeah.
So, and they kind of played off. So she would have been like the defendant attorney usually, like, like she would always try to get off. She had like the scummy criminals usually. And they would always, like, every episode would kind of have, they would cycle in like these, like scumbag kind of characters, like they would play for laughs. Mm-hmm. And she would always have to defend them. Who else was there? Mel Torme was kind of like an unofficial character. He was always being talked about by Harry Stone. It was like his favorite performer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mel Torme. It was just always talking about Mel Torme. It's like he loved magic and Mel Torme.
Yeah.
And I remember in one episode they actually had Mel Torme show up in the show, and it was not disappointing, but it was kind of sad for Harry because in every typical show, like there's so much going on. They're moving in and about, and whatever. And then so like Mel Torme was there as himself to see Harry, but he would show up like in his chambers, and then like Harry wouldn't be there, so he'd wait around for a minute and then leave, and then Harry would come back and be like, "You just missed him," and he's like, "Ah." But I just really enjoyed that show.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like necessarily like a standout show. I mean, I think they did win some Emmys and stuff, like John Larroquette. And every episode was very much the same. Like I can't, like, not one particular episode stood out a whole bunch. Getting warm.
Yeah, he's on The Librarians now. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've seen promos for it.
Ruth watches it.
Is it any good?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. But
I love seeing John Larroquette.
It's funny, yeah, because when I see him, I always think of his character on Night Court.
You can't
and
help
he's just
it.
like such a scumbag too. He's like a totally different character on The Librarians.
He was like totally like this 80s kind of he fit, like he was just this classic 80s character,
Yeah.
He was expensive suits and like womanizer, and he would always kind of get what he wanted, but he couldn't have Christine. Like that's what he really wanted because he couldn't have her.
Yeah.
But I remember I watched that show during its initial run and then reruns. I remember watching that so many times in reruns. Mm-hmm. Like I would come home from school and, I would watch the, DuckTales and Rescue Rangers and all that stuff. And then I'd watch WGN because they would have like Night Court reruns. Like they'd run like 2 or 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Kind of like how like you see Big Bang Theory on TBS and stuff now.
Yeah.
Just long blocks of Night Court.
I know that's when I watch most of them is just reruns.
Yeah. Nick, who are you going to take for your second pick?
Okay. Let's see. All right, so I already said I'm not going to say that.
So have I taken 2 of your shows?
Well, Alf I already knew. I mean, I did write it down, but I knew there's no way that was yours.
Yeah.
Okay, which do I say first? I'm going to say this one. MacGyver.
Oh, MacGyver.
So
thought about MacGyver.
Yeah, so that was 85 to 92.
Oh gosh, MacGyver. MacGyver. So okay, now who is MacGyver?
Richard Dean Anderson.
Richard Dean Anderson. Thank you. MacGyver was a show that I didn't watch the show as much as it. To me, MacGyver was almost kind of like shorthand for something, like if you're rigging something up, you're like, oh, you
yeah.
MacGyvered that thing, you know, like that. To me, that was always what I think about when I think of MacGyver. Like I can't think of a specific episode. And then like MacGyver came back as a parody on SNL, MacGruber.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever see that? Like it was like this, like, you know, the skit was you would always get some guy in a room, and you know, like he wasn't like as good as MacGyver. Like MacGyver always got it done.
Yeah.
MacGruber was always kind of screwed up. Like he never really got, like that would always end in a big explosion. And then there was a movie. So like I've kind of got like MacGruber and like the shorthand for rigging stuff up, MacGyver.
Yeah, I know I've said that before when I've like cobbled something together or whatever, like made something work. I'm like, I MacGyvered it.
Yeah, you know, and I hope this isn't one of your shows. I apologize if it is, but you know, like when I think of that, for some reason when I think of MacGyver,
The mullet.
let's talk about the mullet. Yeah, he did have that. He was rocking that mullet, and that, but it was an appropriate time period for that mullet. It's not like he was rocking it
was
like
normal.
into the 90s or whatever. Like I think that when did it run from? 85, 86?
It ended early 90s. What'd I say? I lost it now.
So Billy Ray Cyrus came out and he retired. He was like, Billy Ray's, he's taking it as high as the mullet can go. I can't. 92. Yeah, okay. So who was like, so I take it that's a show that your family watched a lot.
Yeah, that was another like family show.
Family show.
Yeah.
So take me through, like, was it an hour show or a 30-minute show?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I want to say an hour, maybe.
Can you think of any of like what similar to? I don't want to. I keep wanting to reference other things that could possibly come up, so I'm trying to stop myself.
He would have like his reoccurring like arch nemesis.
Oh yeah,
Murdoch. Yeah.
Murdoch.
Oh yeah, and
It's like his Moriarty.
Oh yeah, yeah. And like Murdoch would always like apparently die like in some way. Like there's no way you could survive, and then you know like the next season he survived.
Oh, okay, like a
he would have like
a slasher movie villain.
Yeah, he would have like some new scar or something or other. Yeah, I mean, like every time he'd come back like
narrowly escaping an exploding building, just with like a scratch. Like I saw that building; it went up in flames.
Yeah, I mean he was like just a master of disguise and like everything, and he was.
Did MacGyver work for anybody, or was he like just kind of?
It was weird. It was like the Phoenix Foundation, like whatever that is, you know. Like, that's like I don't even know what
it's so generic. It's just all you need to know.
Yeah, like Pete Thornton was like head of like the Phoenix Foundation, and like I don't even know.
Like whenever you say it like with the smirk. I gotta keep taking a drink when you say Phoenix Foundation.
Well, it's funny because you know they've revived MacGyver. And
oh yeah. Have you watched it?
Yeah, a little bit. Ruth watches it a lot more. I've seen it like here and there, but they've kind of really kind of fleshed all that stuff out a lot more.
A bit more. So there's a little bit more like lore building in the new one.
Yeah, I can't even really explain it, but they're like some secret organization or whatever in the new one. But like,
but he still does a doodad like with Coke cans and like tinfoil.
Nobody really had a clue. Like, why is he here? Like,
I'm here to save the day, MacGyver. Like, who's this guy with a mullet? We never even asked you.
Yeah, like whatever situation he's in, it's like, why are you even there?
But he's there.
Yeah.
Was there a favorite gizmo that he constructed that sticks out in your mind that you can think of?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, they were all probably so similar.
Just give him some bubble gum and a paper clip and a rubber
pair of headphones, and he like takes it apart and takes out pieces.
Makes a jet plane.
A jetpack he flies out. Well, that was the joke. That's what I'm talking about. It was just always kind of like a shorthand joke by the. I didn't think that I was too cool for MacGyver, but MacGyver was, I think it played on like CBS or something, which was like kind of the older person's network. So, in my mind, it was like the same people that like MacGyver are the same people that watch Matlock, or something. Because it was, but that's not fair. Because I mean, I know it's not fair. People who watch MacGyver probably like it for all the reasons that people watch like an Ocean's 11 movie. There's some like, interesting little way that they're going to save the day, and they're, it's not the whole show. It's not about him just like making stuff out of random things in the room. That probably happened very seldomly, I guess. in reality.
Oh no! Well, I mean, every episode there was like.
So they did pull it out every. So you kind of expected it.
There's that bit like every episode where he had to get out of some situation.
Oh, how's he gonna do it?
So he just like looks around. And
Right.
Okay, let me get a little of this. And,
takes a belt buckle off and then pulls out a tooth with filling in it and melts it down with a lighter, and voila, he's got a bazooka or something that fires a bullet. So yeah, that's a very 80s show.
Yeah.
And so like, it goes well. Like you got your comedy, now you got a drama, and that probably was an hour long, I bet.
Yeah, I think so.
It probably was one of those shows that came on around 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And,
I don't know, 8 to 9 probably.
Oh, 8 to 9?
My bedtime was like
Oh,
9,
okay. All right, that's true. It was like a family show. So, yeah, I could maybe see that from 8 to 9. Yeah, I wish I could lend more to MacGyver, but and I saw it on the list, and I kind of paused for a moment going, oh, yeah, that's a big 80s show. But then I was like, I never really watched it, so I would be disingenuous of me to put it on my list. But very cool character, in all honesty. And, it's neat that he's back. So, and I think there's other shows that they've rebooted too.
Oh, yeah.
So that's not, was it Magnum? They rebooted recently too. Cool. Anything else about MacGyver?
No.
I could see Mark really loving that show.
Oh, we all did.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, my third pick in the 1980s TV show draft is going to be, so this will be the 5th overall pick. I'm going to go with The Wonder Years.
Yeah, I came so close to writing that down, and I didn't even write it down.
Yeah, so that show ran from, I think, 88 to, was it 93? I think I wrote something down, but it's not right. And the show didn't run a real long time either, because it was geared on Kevin Arnold, who I want to say it was in the 5th or 6th grade when it started. And
yeah, I know they went on to high school.
Yeah,
in the run of the show.
And the show was all about coming of age.
So it was all through the years of middle school.
Yeah, which we were that age. Mm-hmm. When The Wonder Years first aired, Arnold was like us. And even though the show took place in the 60s, I guess as it was, so there was all that 60s nostalgia, which didn't necessarily do anything for us. 60s, I have nostalgia for 60s stuff now because of that, because I was looking, even though it was 60s, you could very much relate to a bully in your school or your older brother messing with you, or kissing a girl for the first time or whatever. I remember very well the episode where Kevin gets his driver's license. His dad had to teach him.
I don't remember that.
Oh, it was rough. So, and like I said, I'm experiencing these things along with Kevin. Mm-hmm. But the show, now, there's a show out now that I love that I can't help but think of. The Wonder Years, and that's the Goldbergs, which has 80s nostalgia, which is for us. Mm-hmm. But, it's narrated similarly to the Wonder Years. Patton Oswalt is Adam Goldberg's, voice, and then in the old show, and Kevin Arnold was his narration, his grown-up voice was what's his name, Daniel Stern, and he had that great voice. And something's happening, and it was just the perfect storm of great 80s stuff, because Fred Savage was such a big star during that time, the late 80s. Even in the mid 80s, he was coming up pretty big.
The Wizard.
Yeah, he was in The Wizard, which was huge for us. He was the sick kid from The Princess Bride, whose dad comes over and reads him the story of The Princess Bride.
Which I'm sure you've seen the news of the Deadpool, at Deadpool Before Christmas. Is that what they're calling it? But they're they're re-editing Deadpool 2 with kind of a Princess Bride kind of.
No, I have no idea about
really?
This. No, how's this gonna work?
No, yeah, and they got Fred Savage is laying in the bed, just and
Are you serious?
Yeah, and Deadpool's reading the grandpa was
who was the grandpa? It was
Columbo.
Columbo, yeah, it was Columbo. He's I think he's passed away, hasn't he? He's around anymore.
I think I don't know.
Oh, that'd be great if they could have gotten him too.
But yeah, they're having kind of doing like the Princess Bride, where he's like telling a story.
So they're re-editing the most recent movie.
Yeah.
Is that they're recutting the movie?
They're recutting the movie, and it's going to be in theaters like around Christmas time.
I did not hear this. You're kidding. Are you sure?
Unless
I've never heard this. This is news to me. You're not kidding me.
I
can tell you're not kidding.
I've got some wild dreams, I guess.
That does seem like a wild fever dream. Like you woke up in sweat. Can't wait to see that movie. That's awesome, man. No, I didn't hear about that. And I'll absolutely go see that.
Oh, and it's supposed to be like PG-13, I think.
Oh, so they're gonna cut it towards PG-13?
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. The Deadpool. You've seen Deadpool 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff going on in that movie.
So it'd be interesting to see what they do to it.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd go see that because I know we even have a hard time going to see old re-releases of movies we'd really want to see, like when Transformers came out in
just don't have
theaters
time
and
to see stuff.
Dark Crystal and all these other movies we mentioned. Like, yeah, I would love to go see that. We did see Ghostbusters though. We got to that one.
I still haven't seen Venom or something else.
Predator.
They're
both good.
I haven't seen
I think Predator is a little more enjoyable than. I can't say.
Anyway,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Wonder Years.
Wonder Years. Yeah, so,
Winnie Cooper.
Winnie Cooper, everybody's first crush. Winnie Cooper, who's like smoking hot nowadays, and like a genius or something like that.
Oh, yeah,
she's
yeah.
like really really smart. There was his best friend, whom I blanking on his name. Paul. Yeah, who people like. There was that old like myth that he grew up to become Marilyn Manson. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It's like, so you're looking at him and you go, maybe, yeah, but obviously it's not true. But yeah, he was great. He was like Milhouse. You know, he kind of had that same kind of like, you know, gawky kind of nerdy kid. Yeah. Then there was his older brother who would always like terrorize him and like make his life miserable. And he had the older sister who was kind of like hippie-ish. But I loved his dad.
Yeah.
His dad was like so rough in the exterior. There'd be like a show from time to time where he'd soften up a little bit. Like the one episode, there was like one show where he took Arnold to work with him, and in that episode, so you're always constantly seeing his dad kind of like, you know, he just gets home and he's kind of cantankerous and, you know, he just doesn't want to be bothered,
tired from work, and
yeah. But you see what happens at work. Like he's constantly being dressed down at work. Like his bosses, his superiors are like talking down to him, and he can't really. You know, he's not the same man, you know. Like, and so like Arnold's seeing this, and it's like heartbreaking in a way.
Yeah.
And so they had this like heart-to-heart talk at the end of the episode, and it went something like, he was just like, "Dad, when did you know you wanted to become like the assistant district and regional manager or whatever?" It was like, it's like just a job. And he looks at him. He's like, "What? No, nobody ever just wants to be that when they're a kid. Like I wanted to be a sailboat captain or something like real kiddish." Mm-hmm. So it was this great like heart to heart scene, and he's like somebody who like kind of grew up without a dad in the house. Like I pictured like that dad, you know, like I just, you know, there were all kinds of TV dads, like they're all over the board, but he felt more realistic to me than like most other dads.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like, yeah, don't bother me. Like you said, I've had a long day. I don't have, you know, I'm not gonna cuddle you, you know, like that.
I kind of remember that episode, and I just remember like he came out of it with like this newfound respect.
Absolutely. Yeah. He just saw his dad in a different light. Like, oh, my dad wasn't born this way. It's not, you know, he's just, you know, he's just a man. He's not like this untouchable, unstoppable like person. Like, you know, you look up to your parents in a certain way. You get older and you see that they make mistakes. They're just not the person you thought they were. So it was touching. And that's like the series to me as a whole. Every episode had like some kind of revelatory moment and just growing up. Mm-hmm. So I always loved, and the music was good. Mm-hmm. You know, they would always have those great tracks from like the 60s. And now this is one thing I don't really remember. Do you remember? Like the very first episode, like they had a brother who went off to Vietnam and was killed. Do you recall that? Because I don't.
It's
like how the show starts.
Yeah, but it wasn't his brother. It was Winnie's brother.
Oh, okay. It was her brother.
Yes.
that's heavy, man.
Yeah.
So like right off the bat, like there was all these comedic elements to the show, but it was always grounded in drama, So I really liked that show. It only went on for so many years. It always killed me how like Kevin would always get like the cutest girlfriends. I remember Alicia Silverstone was like his girlfriend for a couple shows. Well, it's like back when I thought she was just like so hot. But I love that show, and it feels like, just I look back at that show as like a snapshot of growing up, even for me. Like even though like there's like decades between when he grew up and when I grew up, I just related to that show so much.
Oh, baby, how you all I need is my brother. I say I'm gonna get high. Oh, yeah.
That's my third pick, Nick. What about you? What's your next pick?
I'm gonna do Knight Rider. Okay.
Now we're getting into like an 80s show that had a car.
82 to 86.
Very, very 80s. So smack dab in the middle of the 80s. David Hasselhoff.
The Hoff.
Don't hassle the Hoff. And who was the actor who voiced Kit? Was it Anthony Daniels or no?
No, that's C-3PO.
That's C-3PO.
Yeah, I can't think of
always
his name. But yeah, I mean, I love the Kit's voice.
It was great. Well, he was Feeney, right? In Boy Meets World.
Yeah, Mr. Feeney.
Yeah. That's nice. Oh, that's one of the great opening like theme songs ever. And Knight Rider, I think's come up a handful of times on our show. It for sure came up in our vehicles episode. I think we talked about Kit anyway.
Yeah. When before everybody's phones would just do this and GPSs were a thing, and everybody had to get a GPS. I got my brother Mark a GPS that had Kit's voice, so it would tell you directions in Kit's voice. William Daniels. You were close with that Daniels.
Okay. William Daniels. Okay. It's interesting how they would always find ways to write Kit into an episode because he's just a car. Because, and realistically, he's just, Michael Knight's just going to drive him to wherever he needs to go and be like, okay, I'm going to park you here now and then go over here. And then, like, there's no need for Kit anymore.
Well, Kit could drive himself.
He could. He was like sentient, basically. He could drive himself around. And then they had the episodes where, like, Kit actually had an adversary.
Yeah, they had the evil Kit car.
Yeah. So I always thought that was interesting. What was their organization for Knight Rider? Like they
I don't I just remember it had like the chess piece like a knight.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what the name was. I can't really remember all that terribly much about the show except
I can't either, except how
car.
Great there was a great theme song and I was obsessed with Kit.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to see more Kit. That's all I cared about. Like as far as like what, everyone else was doing, I just didn't care. And we were little kids. I mean, like, what were we going to care about?
They would do, like, the Dukes of Hazzard, like, slow motion jumps.
Yeah, except Kit didn't need, like, a bale of hay on the side of the road to ramp. Like, he could just kind of jump stuff himself, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Didn't he have, like, some sort of capability
he
to
would
do
have,
that?
like, turbo boosters or something.
Yeah, turbo boosters. And, like, there was, like, a truck that they would roll up into, and that was kind of like their mobile command center unit or whatever.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me of that game Spy Hunter,
Yes, very much so. And Spy Hunter, I guess, came out after the show, so I'm sure it kind of took its cue from that. Well, they were right around the same time, but it says here Knight Rider, we say it was in 82. Wow, I think of Knight Rider being, like, later. And that show's been, I'm sure you're right, that show's been rebooted too. Like, did you know that came back at least once?
Yeah, a couple times I think. There was like a Knight Rider 2000.
Yeah, there was Knight Rider 2000, and then there was another one. It was like around 10 years ago where they, brought him back as like some new car. It wasn't like obviously a Trans Am or anything anymore.
Yeah,
maybe it was like a Mustang or
I don't think any of them were all that terribly good.
Yeah, no, well, and then probably even the original show wasn't all that fantastic.
Well,
but
we can't remember much.
No, we can't really remember. I mean, the show gets drafted on Kit alone.
Yes,
basically.
Yeah.
doing all those cool things. I loved the effect of the little red light in the front.
Yeah.
And the little woo-woo sound effect that they would give him.
And inside it would have, like, when he talked, it would have the...
Like, kind of like a stereo equalizer.
Yeah.
You know, like the little LED. There'd be, like, a couple of bars. And, yeah, it was just, like, from his voice.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave Kit a face, almost. But, yeah, you know, he would get in the car and he would advise Michael on what, you know, would be the best course of action. I'm kind of just guessing, you know, like in my mind, in my kid brain, that's what I remember. Is that he would give Michael advice. Michael would be kind of like this renegade, do it by his own rules.
I'm kind of picturing it like MacGyver. Like it's this organization that you don't even know what they do.
Who cares? How did you get here? But unlike MacGyver, he shows up in this bitchin' car, you know, so like they don't care. And, you know, David Hasselhoff was a really big star back then.
Yeah.
You know, he shows up in his like big old hair and locks and his leather jacket and looking all cool.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you're welcoming of him. You're like, this is weirdo loner with a mullet. He doesn't have a
button-up shirt.
Yeah,
all
pretty
up,
much,
you
yeah.
know?
But that's a pretty interesting. I remember having. Okay, so like I'm thinking in terms of merchandising. What of Knight Rider today? Merchandising, where the real money's made. I think I had some coloring books, maybe. I never had a toy though. I never had like a Knight Rider toy, which would have been great.
Yeah, I don't know if we had anything.
There was a slot car set, you know, like the little slot car race cars you could like ride around in a figure eight. There was one of Knight Rider. And it was like the same company that would do like G.I. Joe and the Transformer. Like it was always like the same company. They would just slap like another IP on it.
Right.
And one time they had the Knight Rider car. So that was something they could do. But surely to God, there was like an RC car or something, you know. Like I tell you what, nowadays, like people who are adults like us, there's probably tons of cool kit stuff out there now you can buy. Probably like radio controlled cars that you can talk into like from your watch and then like it speaks. So I don't know. It's a cool show. It was a cool car.
Good theme song.
Good theme song.
Knight Rider, a shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist.
And I love the Busta Rhymes
Right.
version of that. Like fired up song is phenomenal. All right, so that was the 6th overall pick. So now with the 7th overall pick, I think it's the 7th. Maybe. Let's see, how many have I done? So I've done Alf, Night Court, and Wonder Years.
I did
You've done. So
3.
this is the 7th pick.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the 7th pick in the 1980 TV show draft, I'm loving that theme. I'm going to go with a show called That's Incredible.
I don't even know that show.
Yes, you do. This show came on in the early 80s. It ran from like 80 to 84, and it was like That's Incredible, whether you remember it or not, it was one of those shows where they would get interesting acts onto the show and discuss. Like Tiger Woods was discovered on That's Incredible as a little kid. There was an episode where they held the video game World Championships in Twin Galaxies was featured on one of the episodes.
Oh, yeah.
This show I remember pretty vividly. There was one cool, and so like there were like acts like they would also do like the Rubik's Cube World Championships where they would have, you know, like the first part of the show would be regional things where they'd have all the kids like doing the Rubik's Cubes. And, you know, like, of course, they got like the 80s bowl cuts and the big old tinted glasses. You know, it's awesome. And I love it. And then, like, when they'd get to the show, it would be like the best of the best. Like some dork from Texas and like some introvert from Connecticut, you know, like they would face off and they would do it so fast. It was amazing. I forgot how big of a phenomenon Rubik's Cubes were. But the episode that stands out to me the most was they had, they would do like these dramatizations. Like, now, surely you remember shows like Unsolved Mysteries where, you know, they would do like dramatizations of events, like accounts, like things that would happen. And That's Incredible was like part, like, let's get some really interesting people on the show, and part weird, spooky things that you can't believe happened. And it was the early 80s, so like nobody was around debunking this stuff. There's like no internet. There's no Snopes.
Right.
So if you present it in a realistic enough way, you just buy it. So there was an episode where, and I had to go find it on YouTube because I was only barely remembering it, but it exists, and you could find it on YouTube. They had like a psychic so there's this Toys R Us that was haunted supposedly, and employees would report instances of like toys like being like flung from shelves. Who knows like what people are imagining, and it's all played up for the show, but. So they get this like psychic, someone who's like sensitive to these things. They bring her on the show, and then they get like a guy who's got like two types of different, like a high speed film that like shoots like in the dark, and infrared film where you could see things that like you wouldn't normally see like to the naked eye. And they have like this kind of like seance kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And there's a group of people, and they're all like in this Toys R Us at night after hours. And she's like talking. She's like, "Oh, really? Okay." So she's like talking to the spirit. And all the while they're showing like pictures that they're snapping. And, she's like, "Oh, now he's leaning up against the wall as he's talking to me now." And then they would show like a snapshot of like this kind of shadowy figure like up against the wall. So again, they're kind of like, it's all bullcrap, but they're just like, they're painting it in this like kind of realistic light.
Mm-hmm.
This seemingly normal toy store is a popular place for local kids. There are those who claim that it's a favorite haunt of a very playful ghost. It's at night after closing time when the toy store becomes most haunted.
Could a ghost be lurking here in this irresistible playground?
And, so they did some research. Apparently the Toys R Us was built on this plantation, this old home. And one of the kids, one of the daughters of the like rich plantation owner, was in love with like somebody from the help, somebody like of the help, whatever. Yeah. And so like he dies somehow, and like so he never gets to realize his true love. So he's kind of like there still, and like he's the guy who's like haunting the Toys R Us. And it's so cheesy and baloney, and I'm watching it now and I'm going, oh, as an adult you just like dismiss it right away. Like none of this like even comes close to being realistic now. But as a kid, I'm like watching this as a kid. It's blowing my mind. I'm like 7 years old and I'm watching this. I'm going, this is so creepy and so interesting, and it's got me convinced that like all this stuff's real. But that's kind of like how I remember the show. Like it was hosted by like a football player and some, 80s guy, like, typical like game show host looking guy. He was on there, and then they kind of co-hosted it together. And it was just like an hour long. And it was called That's Incredible.
I don't remember it at all.
Oh my gosh. I thought for sure you would remember this. It totally seems like something you guys would have maybe watched as a family.
No.
You got to ask Mark. I bet Mark remembers it.
He's probably heard of it.
Yeah. He's probably heard of it because you guys were all watching the same stuff apparently when you were growing up. But yeah, That's Incredible. That's my pick. That's one of my like out of like curveball picks that like I knew you wouldn't pick. And you've never even heard of it, so I was totally right on that one.
Let's see. Okay. I've got two more to choose, so I've got three strong ones.
Oh boy. And you've only got 2 picks left.
I'm going to say this one because I don't think you'll say it.
Okay.
Head of the Class.
I thought about Head of the Class.
We loved Head of the Class.
Yeah, it's a great show.
That was
yeah.
Another family time.
Another fine ensemble cast. The teacher. Now, they had 2 teachers. One was like the guy from WKRP in Cincinnati.
Oh, I don't remember that. I'm quite sure you're right, but I
well,
don't
they had
remember
the Australian guy later in the show in the series.
Australian guy.
Let me see.
I think I quit watching by then.
Oh, what? You don't even remember the main guy I'm talking about? The WKRP in Cincinnati?
No, Mr. Moore. I know Mr. Moore.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. I'll tell you his name here in just a second. So
call me by my first name, Mr.
Howard Hessman. Yeah, there he is. So he was the main DJ in WKRP in Cincinnati. He was in Flight of the Navigator. I don't remember that. But yeah, so he was when the series first started, and then he left the show. And who was it that they brought in?
I know him. He's Australian.
No, he's not the replacement guy.
Well, that's what's confusing me because I'm like, I don't remember the Australian, and then you just kept going. You don't remember Mr. Moore? No, I know Mr.
Well,
Moore.
no, I was surprised that you don't remember the. I mean, I know you remember it because you watched the show, but he's very famous for being in WKRP in Cincinnati, which was more of a '70s show, granted. Who was the guy?
We're
they
still
brought
talking
in?
about Mr. Moore.
Okay, yeah. Well, but I was just saying. I was saying there were two teachers.
That guy I know.
Yeah, there were two teachers. The first guy was him, and then there was another guy that came in like later. And I swear I can't find him. Can't find his name. But it doesn't matter. Let's talk about Mr. Moore and the class because they all stayed pretty consistent. Now, so there was the dweeby kind of guy and the big kid.
I want to say
It was like Arvid. Yes.
yeah.
Arvid was the like geeky kind of kid.
And there's the big guy.
Was it Alan? Well, I remember Robin Givens was in the show, and her name was I don't remember. I didn't remember her name, but it was Darlene.
Oh man, and what was that one girl?
Kimberly? No, Sarah.
Sarah?
Dennis. Dennis was his friend.
Oh, Dennis.
Yeah. So Dennis and to me, they were like my favorite characters. I loved them two together.
Simone.
Oh, Simone. Yeah, I do recognize that name.
Yeah, I had like a crush on her.
Let's see. I want to pull up a picture.
She was one with red hair, right?
Yeah, she's got red hair in this. She's actually like she's looking very nice, even in this picture here.
Yeah.
Her name's Christine Hage. Hey, I don't know. How would you pronounce that? H-A-J-E.
Oh, Billy Connolly. I remember.
Billy Connolly. Thank you. He was the replacement. Yeah, he came in to replace Mr. Moore later.
Yeah. I like him.
And he was on the show for several seasons too, it seems like. He actually might have been in more episodes, but maybe not. It kind of feels like one of those situations where like you have a notable star who comes in and starts a show and wants more money, doesn't get it, so they go out and replace him. It's like the Hogan family, like where like the Hogans came out and it was Valerie Bertinelli and she wanted more money, and so they brought in Sandy Duncan, and like the show got even more popular with her.
I can't even say it. Jawar. Remember that guy? The Indian guy.
No, I don't really remember him.
But here's how I like it. There's how his name is. Like I remember him saying it.
Jawa
Haral.
I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody. I can't read that. It's too many consonants. But yeah, that was a fun show. I really enjoyed that show. It reminded me of that. There was a movie that would play during the 80s that it kind of reminded me of called Summer School.
A lot of these character names, like I'm not even like remembering. I mean, like Arvid and
Dennis and Arvid,
and Simone.
Yeah, even like Robin Givens' character Darlene. I don't remember that name in my head. Like I can't think of her name. There was like the principal guy, Dr. Samuels, I guess. Like I look at his face, William G. Schilling. I look at his face. I'm like, yeah, I remember him.
Yeah,
right there. Like,
yeah, I remember
that goofy looking like chubby face of his.
Yeah,
so
the shows are like that are always interesting because it's like you just feel like all you ever see is when they're in that class.
Exactly.
And it's like, don't they ever go to any other class?
Well, they were like, weren't they? They were like, so they were gifted students, right? They were like smarter. They were like your advanced.
I guess it was like the opposite of.
It wasn't like detention or anything.
No, what was that show? The 70s.
Welcome Back, Kotter.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of Kotter.
With John Travolta, yeah. Rejects and like.
And they actually had an episode that had I think Travolta was one of them, but people from Kotter that were in it. They had kind of a Welcome Back, Kotter episode.
Yeah. So I watched a bunch of those shows, but like. I can't remember a lot of specifics. There was one show where they'd produced a music video or something, and it was to that song like "I Gotta Wear Shades," and they were like cheesy '80s special effects for their video. It was like typical '80s music video stuff, and I loved that episode. But yeah, they were just I think they were just. I guess it was like a period in their full day of school.
Yeah,
it certainly seemed like they hung out there all day.
I mean, because I know they would always do things to like to cut between scenes that like the bell would ring and they would go somewhere.
Yeah.
But then like all you would ever see is just in that class.
All anyone ever cared was the interactions in that class. And what made the show...
Or maybe in the hall, like something's going on in the hall.
I don't even remember that, but I'm sure there was. I'm sure there had to be. Like, they had to just have more than one set on the TV show.
Yeah.
But what made that show interesting was because it wasn't like Arvid was your stereotypical, like, really smart, gifted student. But there were all the different types of kids represented, you know? Like, there was, like, your... You know, like Robin Givens' character was sort of the princessy, sort of Molly Ringwald character, you know, privileged, very pretty, popular. Alan, who, you know, but Dennis, you know, he just was kind of like the jokester guy. Not terribly popular for his athletic abilities or anything, but he certainly seemed cooler than Arvid.
He always kind of sat in the back, you know.
Yeah, he was always the one cracking the jokes, it seems like.
Yeah.
Simone, I guess, was just sort of like your overachiever type. You know what I mean? Like one of those kids that are always like doing the extra credit. She wasn't nerdy or anything, but she was one of those like raising her hand like first in class types.
Yeah.
Alan, I don't remember him very, like, I'm seeing his name pop up, but I don't really remember him. But yeah, that you know, you mentioned that show as a family. It was a very family friendly show, and it was a total sitcom, and it worked. And I loved, you know, Mr. Moore. Like he was like a very kind of he didn't seem like the kind of guy that should be teaching these kids.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And what kind of class was it? Like,
I don't know what subject it was. I maybe it was like history or something.
yeah, I was gonna say like social studies or
But
something.
yeah, social studies could fit too.
Yeah, I don't know.
It certainly wasn't math or English.
I can't really remember a lot of details about it.
Yeah, well, that you're kind of like me. Like I haven't seen any of these shows we're talking about, and yeah, not even the Wonder Years. I haven't seen that in a long
Wonder
time.
Years I have seen fairly recently because I was watching it on Netflix.
Oh, it's on Netflix?
Not anymore. I don't
I would love to watch that.
In fact,
again.
I don't think I quite finished it before it was taken off.
That was such a good show. You know the interesting about that show? Sorry to go back to it because now we're on the head of the class, but that show is one of those. Oftentimes, the shows that are really critically successful aren't big, huge ratings winners, and that show was almost canceled a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
And its first season was only 6 episodes, and I was doing some research on it, and it actually won an Emmy just for on the strength of 6 episodes by itself.
Yeah.
So there was something about that show. It was like so quality. It didn't look like a TV show. It looked almost like it was filmed like a movie. But yeah, Head of the Class, very much like a TV show. But it was always good for laughs.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I keep saying these shows that I don't really remember a lot of details for, but I just remember them as that's what I did with my family, like in those evenings when it was on.
It's kind of like you're not really, I don't think, meant to. They weren't so impactful that you're going to remember a lot of things in great detail. I remember the one episode because I liked that song, you know, and it sticks in my head because I thought that song was cool. And I just remember a fraction of it. That's it. But the friendships I remember are, you know, the relationships between the kids, I remember that. And, you know, it's just meant to watch. You enjoy it and you forget about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how a lot of sitcoms in the 80s worked out. They didn't have a lot of gravity to them. There weren't a lot of high stakes. You just, it was 30 minutes and you're on to the next show.
Yeah.
But that's a good one. And I did think about that. I really thought about it hard. And I'm glad you brought that one up. That's a cool one.
Okay.
All right, so my last pick. Oh gosh, I got to think about this. Ooh, I feel like if I say this pick, you're gonna be like staring at me like, nah. But You know what? Okay. For my 5th pick and the 9th overall selection in the 1980s TV show draft, I select the Golden Girls.
Oh my God!
Screw you, Nick. That was a great show. It was really, really funny. And I know it was about 4 old ladies in this retirement condo, but have you watched that show recently? Because
No.
I have. It did play. There's a show called Logo, and they'll play a lot of like old TV shows, and kind of like how TBS will do. Like they'll just wear a show out. You know, they'll show like 4 hours of it a day for like months and then not show it again for a long time. And I just happened to catch it on one of these swings where they were showing like a whole bunch of Golden Girls episodes. And it's so funny, dude.
I like the mom.
Yeah, you know, well, we had an idea for a show that we may still yet do down the road. But we had this interesting debate over who...
So, what, are you going to just give it away even though we might still do it?
No, I guess I won't. I know, I'm terrible. But you and I, in the past, debated lightly, not like a full-on debate, because I think we both agree they're both great characters. But who was really the strongest, funniest character on the Golden Girls? And I would say that it was Rose, Betty White's character. And you were like, I like the mom's character, Sophia.
Yeah, Sophia.
And, you know, she's like, she is a firecracker.
Rose is just dumb.
Rose is kind of dumb. And so, like, we had that conversation.
There's
and
no doubt Betty White is, you know,
she's famous for that role, and she's been in everything before and after that show. But what I was going to say was, if you'll let me make the point, is that, like, I agree with you. After watching the show recently, she's the best part of the show.
I see.
I agree with you. Absolutely 100%. She has the best punchlines, and she gets everybody. Like, you know, she gets Dorothy because it's her daughter, and like she knows her the most intimately and best, and she makes fun of her.
And she's just got that look too, man, with the glasses, with the things hanging down.
Yeah, she would always go on those diatribes like, picture it, Sicily, 1932. I'm this buxom, beautiful woman. Like, you know, like she would have these great stories, like anecdotes. And they were always hilarious. And she was dirty, man. Like she was like this dirty old lady. And they were all kind of like dirty old ladies too, especially Blanche, who was like the one that was always sleeping with everybody. Yeah. What was with these 80s sitcoms and like people like this casual sex left and right, like Dan Fielding from Night Court, you know, Blanche from Golden Girls. Like you look at these old ladies and they got like these 18 like layers of like silky like, I don't know, like what kind of, it was like 80s clothes. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's not sexy. And like the big shoulder pads, and big old hair. And, you know, we're meant to believe that she's like this swinging gal, like with all these like dates going on. Like, it was ridiculous. But I love that show. And I love how they all kind of like, you know, mesh together. And they complemented one another so well. And it was like a real topical show. Like there were shows about like AIDS and like interracial relationships and stuff, and like it really tackled things that just wasn't typical for a sitcom of the 80s. Yeah. So the show, it holds up so damn well. It's really funny. I remember watching that show with my mom, strangely enough. It was one of those shows that like we would watch together.
It doesn't sound that strange.
Yeah, okay.
It's Golden Girls. I'm sure your mom would have watched.
Yeah. She was that age or whatever, you know, so she's kind of like relating to him. But what my point is, like, it wasn't conservative comedy. You know, it was kind of raw and, you know, risque for the time. Yeah. For now, even almost. Yeah. So I really enjoy that show, and I liked rewatching it, and I found myself watching it like every night. And Laura would come like working downstairs.
What you doing? Watching Golden Girls?
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. She like she's like cracking up because I'm watching Golden Girls, and I don't blame her for like snickering, you know, behind my back. Like, I can't believe you're watching Golden Girls. I'm like, this show's hilarious. It's like the Friends of the 80s and old ladies, but it's really good. So like I feel really strong about picking that as my 5th pick. I'm closing out my end of the draft with the Golden Girls. Now, Nick, do you have any memories of Golden Girls before we skirt past it? Like, I know you liked Sophia.
Yeah, I already gave it, Sophia.
All right, fair enough. I've incriminated myself quite a bit.
You would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend.
Now, see, I mean, that's a fine pick, but I feel like
It's a great pick.
I feel like I've got to take away like some other pick now, though, because there's two that I got to choose one.
Yeah.
And there's
Did I screw up the draft by picking Golden Girls?
well, one of us screwed up the draft by picking something else.
Okay, you're talking about That's Incredible?
Well, either that or me saying what did I say?
No. These are all good picks, man.
Yeah, maybe Head of the Class. I don't know.
No. Head of the Class is a good pick. I think that's a great pick. I think you should be proud of that pick. Stand by it.
I stand by it, but
It's taken away a big one.
These other two big,
Yeah. There's one that there's a couple that I'm like, I can't believe I'm not saying these. Two would be a crime if we don't mention, really. I mean, and maybe we'll do shout outs or something at the end.
I know which one I'm going to pick.
Okay.
But I feel so bad for leaving.
Now, should we do some shout outs afterwards that we don't feel so terrible?
Well, and there's a third big one that, we'll get to that.
We'll get to it. Okay, give me your official selection.
All right,
the 10th pick of the 19th, final pick.
My official selection is Cheers.
Okay. Well, that's a great pick.
Which was 82 to 93.
One of the best all-time situation shows, comedy shows. Ran for a long time, and some of the best characters ever.
Yeah.
Sam Mayday Malone, his two big love interests in the show that spanned those 11 or so years, like Shelley Long and
Diane.
Diane and then Rebecca Howe, who was, what was her name?
It's on
Kirstie Allen. Kirstie Allen.
Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. And they were both really strong, awesome characters individually, but so different. But then, man, you had your regulars in the bar.
Diane's kind of annoying.
Diane's super annoying, and I'm sure that was the point.
Yeah.
Sam's kind of like this carefree, fun-loving guy, popular with everybody, and Diane was this sort of pretentious, know-it-all, actor. Just it didn't make sense. The two of them didn't make sense.
I mean, it's just so many good characters, though. I mean, Norm and Cliff.
You couldn't have an episode
Coach,
without Norm walking in.
I love Coach.
Coach is good.
Man,
Coach was really
Coach
good.
Passed away. That's so sad.
For a long time, I always kind of felt like it was shitty of the cast to not attend his funeral, because that was a point that I read. It was sad that they couldn't attend his funeral, and I don't know how to. I didn't know how to take that news, but as it turns out, they were not allowed to attend his funeral.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, so they were they're a pretty tight knit group because they were filming their show together for a long time, and he was a big part of the show. It's kind of like Sam was an athlete.
Yeah.
And so Coach was sort of there. He was like a bartender, but he was the one to dispense all that wisdom, basically.
Yeah.
And he would everybody would look to Coach. But yeah, so apparently
he was so dumb though.
Well, and then they replaced him with somebody who was even dumber.
Woody.
Woody.
Yeah.
But I loved Woody. I liked Woody more than Coach. I have to be honest.
Oh man, I love Coach. I love Woody and Coach for different reasons.
Well, and it's like Rebecca and Diane.
Yeah.
They're both so good. They're great characters.
Yeah.
But it's hard picking your favorite.
Yeah.
But those were the four big interchangeable, the two big changes in the show. And then you Frasier, who's a great character.
And he spawned his own series.
Yeah, he spun off to Frasier.
And I love that series. I mean, it's great.
It's a good show.
He seems like such a totally different character, though, really, between the two shows.
Yeah, I know what you mean. He seemed more like every kind of guy. He would always kind of come off stuffy or whatever a bit. But at the end of the day, he was just like another guy. At the end of the day, spending most of his time at a bar.
Yeah.
with Cliffy and,
You know,
and Norm.
and we watched Cheers fairly recently on Netflix, and
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting watching where like Frasier's introduced and kind of, you know,
It was Diane's
throughout
ex
the
boyfriend,
evolution.
right? No. He
Well,
was supposed to marry her.
yeah. He was gonna marry her at one point,
Right.
but just kind of watching that whole evolution of his character though, and but seeing all the things that don't make any sense of what you know him from his own series later on down the road.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, I think they talk about like his parents at some point or another, and you know, like in the series, his mom, I'm not sure like when she supposedly had died or whatever, but you know, the mom passed away, and the father.
It's got to be hard because you make decisions and choices on a show, and then you decide to spin it off, and you suddenly have to make the whole show about.
I know they do kind of joke on it, you know, in the show, because like when people from Cheers would come like on Frasier,
Lilith.
and they'd meet, well, yeah, they'd have Lilith on there, but like they'd meet his brother Niles and be like, oh yeah, Frasier never talked about you, you know, they would make comments like that, like he never
Right.
talked about it, because they never.
Niles is such a huge person.
In
you know, like-
Cheers, they like never once mentioned he had a brother.
No, never once. You're right. It was just always Lilith, but the two of them together were so great. I loved Lilith and Frasier; they were so phenomenal. Just her deadpan, you know, like sense of humor is kind of like. She reminds me of what was the Amy Fowler character, or whatever from Big Bang. You know, she's just like real kind of to the point.
Yeah,
she had a sense of humor. She had a really wry, funny sense of humor, but she wasn't even near one of the top characters. I mean, like, you know, there was Rhea Perlman, who was Carla.
Carla. Yeah.
Carla was great. I loved it. I mean, the whole bar would get sick to their stomach whenever Sam would hint that he was going to go back to Diane, but especially her.
She'd
man.
go crazy.
Oh my God, she would lose her mind. We're like, Sammy, no, please, not her. But yeah, they all couldn't stand her.
Yeah.
And but one of the main things about Cheers that I loved was that rivalry that he had with the other bar.
Yeah.
What was the name of the bar?
Gary's.
Gary. Yeah. So they would have these real elaborate shows maybe it was like every year they did it.
They would do things like for Halloween. I
Yeah,
know.
it could have been like their version of a Halloween episode.
Yeah, maybe like St. Patrick's Day.
Something like that. Yeah, but whatever. Well, St. Patrick's Day would be a huge deal for a bar.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, I would love those episodes. They would get more and more elaborate with pranks.
Yeah.
So like Rebecca comes in and she's kind of like the boss. So it kind of changed things up quite a bit.
Yeah, like he had sold the bar.
Right.
And
so she was sort of there as the corporate make sure, I guess, that things were going well for the.
Yeah, so for a while, like he was working for her, but then he ended up getting the bar back later on.
Yeah. And then there was the whole like, what was the billionaire?
Robin Colcord.
Yeah, Robin. And then so like he and Sam's sort of rivalry was always entertaining too.
Yeah.
You know, they would have like little wagers and stuff.
He would go to jail. Robin did.
Oh, because of like tax evasion or something?
Yeah, something like
yeah,
that.
like he did some sort of shady 80s business stuff, you know? And you're right. Yeah, so he kind of got his comeuppance eventually. I love that show. It was a great show. And that's another show that got its end. Like, it got to go out on its end, like on its own terms.
Yeah.
I remember that last episode being such a huge deal.
Yeah.
Like, they
kind of ended the same way it started.
How did it start? I don't even remember, to be honest.
Just the bar was like closed or something, and like Rebecca or somebody like came down, like knocking on the door. And, and you know, he's like, "We're closed." You know, It kind of ended that way.
Okay, so like a nice callback to how it started.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say was like the show was such a huge deal. Like they wrapped the show, and then they had like this live, like hour-long show after the show where like they would talk about the show and how important it was, and you know, all this stuff. So it was people were very sad to see Cheers go, but it didn't start out great. Like I think it was another one of those shows that didn't have great ratings, but then it started picking up steam, and eventually became like the #1 show on TV. You know, so. gosh, what else? What else could you say about Cheers? I like that it's like an actual okay, so Cheers is an actual location that you can go to in Boston, but it's not like where they filmed the show, though. Or was it? Because it was filmed in front of a live studio audience, as they would always say in the beginning of the show.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
it had to be like a sound stage.
I've never really looked it up. I don't know, but I wouldn't think so.
But Cheers exists. It's got like the same front. Like you walk down into it, I think. Like, because like they would see the people like walking down the steps to the doors entrance, the entrance of Cheers. I think that all is like a real bar somewhere in Boston. I mean, I know it's a real bar, but I don't know if it came first in the show is, well, this has got to be where we do this show. Like somebody actually saw the real Cheers and was like, this is the set. We're going to build a set that's just like this bar.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never looked it up.
If you guys know, like, let me know. I'd like to think that that's the case. I don't think I'm making that up. But yeah, I love that show. It was great. And Sam didn't really end up with anybody, did he? Like, I don't think he ended up with Rebecca.
No.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, just business as usual.
I mean, they did get together. But
yeah, well, he always, they would always, because the show, that's how shows worked. You'd kind of introduce two characters, and from the get-go, like, oh, well, they're going to try and get together.
They started to end it, I think, that he and Diane were going to get back together again, but then I think he got smart.
Did she come back for the final episode?
She did, yeah.
I think so, yeah. Well, I remember there was a cliffhanger. There was where, how did it work? It was like after one of the earlier seasons where he had proposed to her over the phone or something stupid. And like, so they were going to get married, but it didn't work. Like she proposed to her and like, she like, it was over the phone or whatever. And then they got on this boat and it was like all romantic. And then you think she's going to say yes, but then she says no. So he like throws her off the boat.
Oh yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
So like that's how frustrating that their relationship was, because it's like, are they, aren't they? Are they, aren't they? And then like they get to the point where like they have a whole cliffhanger where he proposes to her, and then she just like ends up saying no to him. And then she was like, yes, I'll marry you. And he was like, forget it. So like it was kind of how it went. But I like that they did that, because so many of those shows where like feels like the interest of the show is built upon whether the two characters are going to come together and be together. And then when it does, it's not interesting anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it kind of is necessary that they kind of like throw a wrench into
like
it.
I wonder kind of, Big Bang Theory is kind of that way now, because, they all, like Leonard and Penny got together.
Yeah, they're all together now.
They're all together
It's
now.
boring now. Well, like in Friends, like Ross and Rachel would hook up, and then like Chandler hooks up with Monica and they get married. So like that, everybody's like hooked up, and that leaves out like Joey and Phoebe.
Well, but Ross and Rachel broke up though.
But they ended up together in the end.
Not really.
Yeah, they did. That's how the last episode was. They kind of like end up together. Like she goes to the airport or something like that. Like, I don't know. They ended up doing it like twice.
She got off the plane, I think.
Yeah. There was like an episode where Ross, like she had admitted that she'd realized that she loved him, but he shows up with like some girl that he met in the UK. So like kind of like threw things off, but then they do eventually get together. And then that they break it off after like a season, and then at the very end of the show they get back together again. I promise you they do.
Yeah, that's what I just said. She gets off the plane.
Yeah, right.
She was going off to Paris.
Yeah, because she got that other job. I've seen too much Friends here lately.
Well, so I mean, okay, you end the show with that. But like the majority of the show, they're like on again, off again.
For sure. Like, oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well,
no,
I mean,
they were for sure off before more than they were on.
But the point we were making is that shows go on.
Yeah.
Like Big Bang, they're together and it's proceeding.
But yeah, well, with Friends,
you're talking about the last show.
Exactly, and that's a good point. Like they knew it was the last show. It might as well let them be together. But you can't have that be the show and then have it expect it to go on.
Yeah, because that's what they're like most of the show. They were like always kind of bickering at each other.
Yeah, which is
had the baby together, but still weren't together, and
right. It's so messed up. I like Ross as a character. He's so flawed and annoying, but
Ross is annoying.
He's super annoying, but I like him. Let's do some shout outs, I guess.
A-Team.
Yeah, A-Team was one that I thought, you probably assumed that I was going to pick it for sure, and I had a feeling you might pick it.
Yeah.
But A-Team was a great show. It's one of the shows that I kind of caught myself because it's like a MacGyver kind of deal.
I feel like A-Team had to be there.
Yeah, it for sure could be there. And it probably would be there if I didn't have to get squirrely and pick some other shows. But I didn't want to pick all the best expected shows. I like to do that thing where you kind of throw in some kind of show. Because I guarantee you, everybody remembers A-Team. There'll be somebody out there that's watching this or listening to this, and they're going to go, oh, crap, I forgot about That's Incredible. That was a cool show.
Or they're going to go, I have no idea that show.
Most people probably will. I was for sure you would remember that.
I have no idea.
I was for sure you would remember that. You know, it only lasted like 4 or 5 seasons, and it came back in the late 80s for like 1 season.
I don't remember it at all.
Just go YouTube it later on. You might remember it if you saw it. But anyways, so yeah, A-Team, and like I was going to say, they would always have a part of the show where they would kind of have to pull their resources together and fend off the enemy or a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like they would turn like a bulldozer like into a tank or something.
I love it when a plan comes together.
I love it when a plan comes together. It's great stuff. All the characters, we've talked about the A-Team, and that's another thing. We've talked about the A-Team in the past when we talked about the van and stuff, and you know, I'm sure we probably mentioned Mr. T. All right, here's one of my shout-outs. Family Ties.
Yeah, that was on my list.
Yeah, Family Ties was a
potential pick.
Very, very, very 80s. So yeah, the parents are like your kind of hippies, kids are the baby boomers, and the kids are the Republicans, and you know, like they're kind of like the hip and with it's, which I guess would be any show,
or at least Alex is.
Yeah, I guess I can't really say that. Was it Mallory was his sister?
Yeah.
She really
the
didn't
older
care.
Sister.
I don't think she really cared either way. And then there was Tina Yother's character. What was her name? The younger sister.
Yeah, I don't remember her name.
And I can't remember the kid, like the brother either. Like they didn't matter. It was always about Alex.
Yeah.
It was always about Alex and Michael Gross and the dad. I loved how they would play off of one another all the time. But yeah, I mean, Alex P. Keaton's a classic character.
I had a show that, like, it's just, it's really like pretty much the top 80s show for me, but I consciously didn't include it because of the current news.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say. Cosby Show.
Yeah,
it was a great show, man.
It's still a great show.
It really is. It's hard to. It is honestly hard to watch, though.
Yeah. So I just consciously didn't say it because of that.
And you know when it becomes really intolerable to watch is when he gets deep into like family value shit.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, shut up.
So anyway,
no, you're. I thought of that too, and there were just so many great episodes, like the episode with the Monopoly money with Theo. And he's
it can't be denied it was a good show.
Yeah, no, you can't take away all of the good writing and performances and lessons. You know, it totally was a great family show. But you can't give it its due. You just can't. It's hard to give it any kind of acclaim, at least for a while.
Yeah, it's
going to take a while. There's too much stink on Cosby right now to even admit that it was a good show for some people, but it was a cool show. Let's see. Dukes of Hazzard was one that I was very close to picking.
Yeah, I thought of it, but I didn't write it down.
I love the Dukes of Hazzard.
Another one I did think about, but I didn't even list was V. You remember that?
The miniseries.
Yeah,
it wasn't really a show, but that was good stuff, man. I'll never forget that part where the alien devours the mouse or whatever. Like it's like the first time that one of the human characters sees the aliens as the lizard looking, because you know, like they had those faces or whatever.
That's really like all I remember is like they would just like rip off the fake mask.
Oh yeah, and they were like these
lizard
grotesque lizardy creatures. But that was a cool miniseries. Yeah. I watched that in its entirety like 10 or 15 years ago. Because I remembered it vaguely as a kid.
I guess I interrupted your Dukes of Hazzard.
No, that's okay.
I didn't know we were going to like talk in depth about every shout out.
Not in depth.
I thought we would just shout out and just back and forth.
Oh yeah, well, but Dukes of
Give
Hazzard,
like the whole synopsis for like every shout out.
yeah, Dukes of Hazzard is one of those shows. The only thing I was going to say about Dukes of Hazzard is it's one of the first shows that I remember revisiting years after it was popular, like in syndication.
Yeah.
I'd find out that it was playing on like some cable channel like at 5:30 in the morning, and I would like make a point to get up early so I could watch it a few times.
Yeah, I didn't really ever watch it.
It was awesome. I loved the whole show, and I remember I got a picture of me at a car show with one of the Duke boys like giving me a hug.
Yeah. Daisy Duke.
Oh yeah, Daisy Duke was hot. And then Cooter, can't forget Cooter, one of the greatest names ever.
Different Strokes.
Different Strokes. I thought for sure you were going to pick Different Strokes.
Yeah.
That was one that I just assumed you were going to take.
It was high, but there were just others that I felt were higher.
What you talking about, Willis? This was one I wasn't really quite sure whether it fit the bill or not, but Perfect Strangers.
Oh man, that's one I forgot to put, and as I was like looking things up, just didn't see on a list and forgot about it.
Really?
Yeah, that would absolutely be. When was that?
See, that's why I didn't really put it on there because I think it went into the 90s for a little while.
Yeah.
It was one of the very first TGIF shows. Well, it started in 86.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it ran for a good portion.
I mean, it is 80s. But.
You couldn't call me on wanting to put it in my 80s list because it probably was. It ran from 86 to 93. So,
some of these others.
It was in the 80s longer than the Wonder Years.
Some of these others technically started in the 70s, so I won't even mention them because we might do something later on. Different Strokes started in the 70s.
It did. Yeah, and then there was one other shout out that I'd like to give that was it had its foot in the 70s and 80s, but I think of it more as an 80s show, but very early 80s, and that's Mork and Mindy.
That's one of in
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
How could you not love that show?
And it was late 70s. It was 78.
Yeah, it was like 78. So, but it had a very 70s aesthetic to it. So you may think of it more of as a 70s show, but it ran pretty well into the 80s.
I'm just going to spit out two more names here.
Okay.
One of which you'll...
I'm done with shout-outs, so let's just hear your other two.
One of which you'll know. The other one, you'll be like, oh, yeah. Silver Spoons.
Yeah. Ricky Schroeder. And
another, Reading Rainbow.
I thought about putting that on my list because that is so 80s, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Butterfly in the sky. I can fly twice as high. Yeah, the LeVar Burton, man.
Yeah, so those are my shout-outs.
That's I thought about that. Oh, one other shout-out that I'd like to give since we're in the shout-out mood.
You said you were done.
I know, but I'm going to say it anyway because it'll never come up again. And that's At the Movies with Siskel and Ebert.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
I almost put that, I was debating it hard, but I went ahead and I pivoted because I went with that's
I didn't really ever watch it. I mean,
I watched it every week.
I'm familiar with Siskel and Ebert, but I didn't really ever watch that.
It's how we got it's how we got our reviews of movies. I mean, yeah, there were columns in the paper that you would also read, but for me, it was watching Siskel and Ebert on Sundays, and it ran for a good portion. It was on PBS for a while through the 70s and very early 80s. And then it switched to WGN because they're both Chicago journalists. Like one was for the Tribune and one was like for the Sun. Or no, not the Sun. I don't know. I can't remember the other big paper in Chicago. And I just love watching.
The Sun, Chicago?
Is it the Sun? Okay, it might be the Sun because
so.
I say Sun and then I'm thinking
Sun.
Phoenix for some reason.
Yeah, I think
they may have a Sun also. Okay, so yeah, maybe it was the Tribune and the Sun. But it was awesome because they often had differing opinions about what was good, and they came together a lot too. And sometimes they would be like that real annoying like film snobby kind of review. Every now and then they would surprise you, like I thought Dumb and Dumber was an excellent film, and that was like all I needed to convince my mom to go see a movie. Like they liked it on Siskel and Ebert. I'm sure they didn't love that movie, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. I watched them every Sunday, and I loved it because it's where I saw my trailers, like previews, because they would talk about previews. And then, of course, you'd see like little clips of the movie. You didn't get any of that. It's pre-internet era stuff.
I remember the first time I started seeing like movie trailers on the internet. It like blew my mind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
Oh my God, you can just see a trailer whenever you want on the internet.
Whenever you want. Yeah, and you just like pull up Apple Quick Tunes or Apple. It was like Apple.
Oh, like QuickTime.
Yeah. QuickTime.
QuickTime was like the thing.
That was like the main, like now it's all over YouTube, but that was where you saw like, I think Phantom Menace premiered on QuickTime and, like this. So like that's where you saw your movies. But yeah, that's a good point. But this was obviously years before the internet. So if you didn't catch it on TV or something, like a little quick 15-second bit trailer, you didn't see anything. So I was always very interested in what they had to say about the movies. But yeah, that's all I have. Thanks for, I thought that was fun. Yeah. It's a nice little twist on our usual 5 and 5 format. And I think we'll have to continue to do that, like kind of surprise each other. So I think it's fun. Yeah, I like that.
That's good.
Okay, so I'm just going to go into our usual ending, where I talk about how we're on both YouTube and all of the different audio aggregators out, like your Spotify, iTunes. You can find us in audio only there. We're also on Google Play, Stitcher. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/BitGeek. You can follow us on Twitter at BitGeek Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Ron Avis.
I'm Nicholas J. Wright.
Yep. You can also check us out on our Facebook page, where we will sometimes post pictures of things we talk about. Nick's done a really good job in the past, like creating little galleries specific to an episode. That's on Facebook at The BitGeeks. And that is pretty much it as far as following us on social media. This is our 50th episode, man.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we made it to 50. That's pretty cool. Yeah, cheers, dude.
Here.
Boom. We'll have to. I don't have any more, so I'm just going to have to pretend. Hopefully we get to do 50 more and just keep doing them. I'm having a great time with this podcast. We haven't been on for a couple weeks. Sorry.
Life happens. Beards grow.
Let's talk about this beard, guys. If you're just listening to us on Spotify or whatever, you don't get to see this luscious beard that Nick's grow.
Maybe it might be gone next time. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it looks cool, man. You should keep it. You got the new hat. It's the first time you've worn this hat.
Yeah, new look,
new beard. Was it you would joke that you might wear reading glasses just to completely throw people off? Like Ron's got a new co-host on the BitGeek podcast. You even recognize this guy. Yeah, you really surprised me when you walked in. My kids were like, "What's that on your face?"
What's on your face?
My daughter's 3. She goes, "What's that your face is?" or whatever. And I was like, "Are you growing that for Beardvember or whatever the heck they call that?"
No shave November.
Yeah, no shave November. But you're like, no, I had that before.
No, don't give it away. No, I stopped shaving yesterday.
Sorry. I just screwed that up. But yeah, so it's the holiday season, and we're just not going to be able to do shows every week with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. But I promise we'll do them as much as we can. We already have we've already got Martin to commit to do a future show real soon. You'll enjoy that topic. It's going to be a classic topic, I think. So we've got that coming up, and so we'll intermittently be showing up on Thursdays when new episodes typically drop.
Yeah.
So check the Twitter page. I'll try and let you guys know if we're going to be out for a couple of weeks. So sorry we haven't been around since the PlayStation Classic, but it kind of worked out because it gave us a little bit of time for Sony to release.
Yeah, they put the news out.
Yeah,
what was it, like 3 days ago or something?
Yeah, it was just a couple days ago.
Yeah, earlier this week.
Yeah, and then, of course, the internet was abuzz. Like,
and of course, it'll be like over a week by the time
True, yeah. By the time this gets edited and released, it'll be more time than that. But if you know when the PlayStation Classic list was released, then you'll know when we recorded this. But for this week, I've been your host, Ron Avis.
And I'm Nick Wright.
See you next time.